Thank you. In the last week, when I spoke to you, or the last time, I spoke of an examination of our biases, and I also spoke to you about the marvelous step from conceptual life into spiritual wisdom and dimensions of understanding. But tonight I want to bring you up to the clock, cycle-wise. We have experienced epiphany, and we understood it as going into a state of consciousness whereby we are purified and where we make an effort to reach the supreme goal of union with God, and that we might render service in this world where He has placed us in the very highest order. And this is the true immersion into life, a dive into life. But many of us are not good swimmers, and we are not good divers, and many of us are floaters, and many of us would rather sit on the banks and watch somebody else do the swimming. But it is important to understand post-initiation in these great cycles. The feedback from such initiations. And more, of course, initiation is becoming to you a word which explains many, many things. But sometimes we are in the midst of initiation and do not understand it is initiation. And we get discouraged and simply move away from the idea that we are involved in a great time of learning and discovering, not only concerning our own natures, but also concerning the nature of life itself, because that's why we're here in the world, is to understand the nature of life and to draw upon it and to produce the energy surpluses of this knowledge, not only to teach others, but to live ourselves in a rational basis, and especially to move out of extensions of harsh judgments against others, to re-examine our bias or our prejudice our father and mothers passed to us concerning anti-race, concerning anti-nations, concerning anti-religion. All of these things we were born in. They were indoctrinated into us. They were fed into us. They were nursed at the breast. They were eaten at the table. And they were part of a family, a side issue of a constant ridicule against fellow men in support of their own insecurities, because that is what bias is, support against insecurity. But one is not insecure if he knows God, if he trusts God. An insecure person has no other healing except he make union with God. So it is every effort we must make to make a union with God. Learn what He is, what it is, the intelligible. Learn what the vision is of the internal and of the intelligible. Learn how it is speaking, what sort of language it is using, which is beyond your identification in a very small, limited expression or vocabulary of expressing the soul. Now, epiphany. Post-epiphany is one of the most vital times of the cyclic period of the year. It is vital because it means you either get off the path or you stay on. And it is a time when there is a general self-scourging and all sorts of disappointments regarding human things. If we are expecting human approval, we're expecting to have our back stroked, it is time to understand something about humility. This comes after Epiphany. Now remember, it correlated to the time that Jesus went into the desert and where he was confronted by Satan. This is post-Epiphany. Epiphany was the baptism of Jesus by John. But Jesus was tested. The 30 years Jesus had consummated with the Essenes, in which he had one experience after another with our Father, so that he knew him with total reality, and so that he could say with authority, the Father told me to do this. The Father told me to do this. He could say this with authority because he had heard the Father's voice, and he knew it. He knew the Father's voice, and he was obedient to that voice to the very time of crucifixion. So in the desert, Jesus was tempted of Satan and shown great power, and he was offered the power to turn. He was told to reveal how he knew, and Satan knew he knew, how to change a stone into bread. Because he knew Jesus understood transenergization and that which turns one thing into another, or another element, or another sort of physical object, or another arrangement of molecules. This is what Jesus understood. He understood the molecular system. He understood how to rearrange the molecular system, the molecules, and he understood how to do this in the human body. He understood how to do it in the soul. They are soul molecules, and there are spirit molecules, and there are mental molecules, and there are physical molecules making up the substances of earth itself and sustaining the elements. All of these are degrees, and when we go towards the eternal aspect of the atomic kingdom, we then are in Jesus' kingdom. That is where we are. So it is not that you are just one little person in the earth and that you're trying to clarify the soul knowledge you bring and trying to use it with consciousness and awareness, and not for your own aggrandizement so much as for the aid of others and service to others. But it is that you are in this period of time initiated into how you will use power. And you are initiated and in this use of power, in that the smallest thing in you which you value is a key to what you think power is. If you value money more than anything, and you're always saying that you do not have enough, or that you're always running after money, that is your thinking where power is. But if you are always running after sex, then you are thinking that makes you a power figure. And if you're always running after depending on somebody else, you are giving the power, you are subordinating the power to somebody else. You just simply cannot use it and will not avoid it. When you have a person who has too much control over your mind, over your will, and over your choice, and over your decisions, they have control of your will. And you have subordinated your will to their will. And that we are taught to never do. To never do. To never give our will totally in a person, because the will and the soul are essentially tied in together as a function of God. And when you give up the soul, you have sold it. You have sold what you call the self, and have to wait many, many incarnations before you come back to the self. So it is important now that those who are going north and those who are staying here with me, that we are going to take the pulse energies of that time in which we have made the endeavor to dive into our natures, and we have asked on the inner to reveal these things to us, not always on the outer, remember, but on the inner. All these things that you are just sort of feeling a little bit with, they are very great and very active in the inner. And when you are asking these questions, the inner is computerizing it up for your knowledge so that you will get your answers into the objective side of the brain. As soon as you pull a lever of some sort of action, then you're going to get consciousness which wants to come out of the inner, but you've got to set it into motion in an act. This is why you're taught that when you are planting in a field, you must plant a plant that has within it the likeness for another plant. In other words, if man had no likeness of what he is as a self. He would have neither memory, nor would he have energized his processes of thinking. He would be just a vegetable or an object, and he would be no more sentient than one of these trees, which is possibly more sentient than we would be without a mind, because we would be finally atrophied into a calcium state and go back even beyond the dinosaurs' removal. There are times of extinction, times of withdrawal in what is called the destroying archetype. Well, as we know, there are three archetypes which function at all times. The first one is the greater archetype, which pours down when there's great knowledge to be had from heaven. The second archetype is the moving archetype, which is 10,000-year intervals, in which we, in a conjoined state with certain starry bodies, we have planetary action which develops first in man, religion and social and society and home and family, then self, and then finally the individualized mind and mental creation of spirituality, and finally union with the Christ at the end of this 10,000 years. And that lasts for 2,000 years until we go back into a new one. But we always take the same archetypal motions in every new archetype, 10,000 years. We go back to what we are building again, religion on another level, family on another level, society on another level, but always trying to achieve a higher until finally man becomes the total of what God expects of him in the world, of what God programmed him. It is not easy for a self-genesis person to have humility enough to recognize and to accept that he is a programmed being and that the results are inevitable, that we are going to reach God before we leave this eternity system. It is inevitable, but it's also that we are on a very loose leash, which I call destiny, and also fate, in which we are given choice so that we will be creating in this earth. And it's through the arrangement of molecular system, through the mind, that man is coming into what he is really to be, through the mind. Now, Niscience is a system to eliminate all ego levels of metaphysics. Niscience is a system that makes a leap over man's sentient pleasure principle desires. And not everyone can understand Niscience because they are still desiring a pleasure principle understanding of metaphysics. And ego metaphysics simply thinks only what it can get, and what you can get, and what you can inflate yourself so that you might roll up to it quickly. Now, it is very important that we remember in this Epiphany, post-Epiphany time, that this is the time when we are confronted by some literal evidence that there are dark powers which tempt us. And they may come through a friend's voice. They may come through some desire that we suddenly, in some impulse, desire to spend or to do something or to experiment with something for the first time. It may be experimenting with friendships. For instance, it is very important to realize that the exchange of emotions between people, the sharing of emotions between people is so delicate that few people really wholly can say that they know how to develop friendship, because they fear exposure in their own natures of emotions to within the emotions of others. And they simply do not know how to handle all of these non-beliefs in the emotions of others, all of these actions which are not yet resolved in Christ. They don't know how to handle it, so they simply put a little shield around themselves, a little glass wall, and so far and no further, and do not offer all of oneself in generous understanding in time of crisis of a friend, or in time of even making a friend, more of a friend. If you do these things, said Jesus, ye are my friends. Now, Niscience is an agape teaching. What does agape mean? Agape means a non-clique association. Every church body every fraternity is supported by clique system. The minister in a church moves and makes his sermons and his conduct and behavior on the altar and his attitude to his congregation by what the clique thinks, by what the clique wants, by what the clique is acting to get at that time. And that is what sustains a church, and the ministers are dependent upon it. In the Niscience body, we work to have agape rather than clique. And agape is this kind of friendship I'm speaking of, in which you can be exposed to the emotions of others without criticizing, without judgment. Because that is the wall of glass, is judgment, in which you simply too involved in your own ego that you do not want to give room for that which his friend is suffering or which he is undergoing. There can be no healing until we have adapted ourselves to this way of life, agape. The agape spirit is consideration of others, which is the first ethic. The first ethic is consideration. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, respecting the privacy of a person. But if that person is involved emotionally and brings an emotion to you and desires something from you, senses you have something to give them the answer, the agape spirit is that in the depth of you, your learning is not wasted, nor will it ever be wasted, because what you are learning is in the inner as a reservoir. And the moment you are presented with conditions which affect others, be it your family, or be it your friends, or be it a work associate, or be it a husband or wife, when you are having this, if you are receiving this in an agape nature, you will get the agape answer. Now, it is very, very beautiful to know that after Jesus went out of the garden, or that is out of the desert place, that he began to choose his disciples. If you do these things, ye are my friends. And he walked by Matthew, and he just trailed his auric garment, and Matthew followed him. And that is when you have this total purity that you have gained over here in the Epiphany. Now, when we form friendships, dependencies into clique actions, we are harming each other. And we are harming those who are out there we are neglecting. This is why in Niscience we try to always do things, John to myself, which affect everyone, not just favored fews. Because everyone is the one, is God. So how can you say you come to my house because I like you and because I think you have a good cultural background, or you come of good stock, or that you are well placed and that you are so and so and so and so. I want you, I just want you. But that is not agape. That is not agape. That clique. So we lay down the mat for our guest who comes to our home, because according to the Hindu statement, he is God. He is God's presence right at your door, and he is coming into your house. These are the efforts we must make. It is a true hospitality, the true last piece of bread shared, the true love that generates kindliness. Now, I'm working now to get you all into this body of love, this bhakti. I'm working now to get you to have this agape spirit, so that when anyone comes on this ground, no matter where they come from, if they are lost or if they are seeking something, they don't know why they come very often, but to get the agape spirit of welcome and love and friendship. I was a stranger and ye took me in. I was naked and ye clothed me. I was hungry and ye fed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye visited me, and I was sick, and ye healed me. So this is agape. This is agape. And these are the first words Jesus ever spoke in a sermon. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. I was naked, and ye clothed me. And they threw stones at him, because they were clique-minded, and their clique power was in a race enclosure and in a religious enclosure, which even to this day is separate and is the whole spirit of the Far East that we know today, in separateness and hatred and assassination, which is in the name of religion. That all comes out of clique. Give us blood, that says. Kill him, they said to Jesus, because he is not like us. He is not clique. So we realize that the line that seems to be wavering towards clique in a group is in danger. But the line that is moving towards agape in the spirit of love is in health of the Christ. We are born, nursed in our mother's breast, hating races, religions, fearful of our neighbor, because in the primal days, sometimes our neighbor fed us poison, coming to the door with food, or had a knife up his sleeve. But because the Christ has come, and he is the messenger of love, we must love. Even though sometimes we have to walk another mile, or give an extra cloak, or share even the sacrament. All of this is part of agape spirit, or holy concern, which is the word for it. Holy concern for one another. Will there ever be a teaching that fully fulfills this? I say yes, but I say it is not now, but there are intervals in which it is now so beautiful. I have seen the agape spirit on these grounds in which love was so beautiful. I see love on these grounds and the sacrifice which goes with agape, and love is so beautiful. And it comes at times more than others. But in these seasons which are so important, in these seasons, important as in the verse Epiphany, Christmas, coming now, Epiphany is preparing us for Ash Wednesday, which is not far off. It's preparing us to all the things that stood in our way when we dived in that water and almost made us drown. We're going to throw off now through doing without them in our time of fasting at Ash Wednesday beginning. We're going to throw those things away that were weighing us down, and especially little tidbits brought to us of separateness in our group body, which are not important, beloved ones. They're just little angry winds in the stomach from bad digestion. That is what they are. So, beloved ones, I tell you this, that the agape spirit is love ye one another. If ye do these things, ye are my friends, said Jesus. Was there ever a person more forgiven than he? Was there ever a person who had more power than he? Was there ever a person who made us realize there was a heaven and also made us realize there was no death? Was there ever a person who could prove himself by manifesting the riches of God in his own nature and by sharing the bread and washing the feet? There's never been one like him, but we are seeking to be like him, and when we are like him, we will see him as he is, because we don't know him now. Ministers on the altar, groups, teachings, books, literature, they do not know Jesus. They have never had Jesus experience. They've never had co-atom experience to Jesus. But because now you can feel the tremor of after Epiphany, you are getting close. You are getting warm. If you've had scourging, you are getting hot. You are getting very close to that atom sustaining which is the electricities which move from soul to soul, and that which comes after the time of Epiphany. And now you're going north, some 40 of you, and that is wonderful. And now those who are not going north are going to be with us Sunday morning with my teaching and Eustace and another. All of us are going to teach on Sunday morning. So we want you to be here because it's a very special time. It's the overflow of Epiphany. It's the casting out of those weighted things. It's the beginning of service to God with our eyes open, that the first opportunity to serve God is to be kind to one another. The first opportunity to express Him and manifest Him in the whole Agape spirit is to love one another. But we are learning our cycles. In fact, before you are going to fast each Saturday or the 10 days after the new moon, you're already beginning to feel certain things that you've never felt before, which are trying to tell you something about psychic law before these special times for prayer and fasting. On the time of 10 days after the new moon, when you fast, this is the time when there are very special things coming into your nature of a high order, enabling you to eventually to get body out of the body experience, to have levitation powers. And levitation powers doesn't always just mean lifting up the body and floating around the room. After all, you could all pull me around here with a rope. That wouldn't be important at all. But the important thing is that the power which is God is limitless, and the power which is God works when He wants to manifest that He is Himself coming in on supernatural rays and trying to give you enlargement of your soul so that you will understand you are not just desolate in this earth all alone, charged with all these vibrations and cross currents of thoughts and telepathic energies which are trying to wear you down and wear you out. All of these things are of God, limitless, infinite. They are here, beloved ones, in you and me. Now, I'm thinking how when you're going north and you're going to do the plaisance again, and you are also going to be together, and you remember you are taking the true Agape spirit. Now, I know some people come to Agape spirit and say, oh, that bed wasn't comfortable, that food wasn't right, I've got indigestion, and oh, this and this and this, and so forth. Why do you go to Agape? Why do you go to plaisance? Why do you go to conflict? You go to have spiritual experience with soul and God. And you go to take a message to those who are yet asleep. You go to take a message to those who are yet asleep. So it is that we must realize we're always communicating. We're communicating with graciousness, or we're communicating with sarcasm, one or the other. What do you want to choose? The censoring of the devil and of the evil, or do you want to live in that beautiful positive of the light and beautiful appraisal of truth in God? This is what is the wonder of God and consciousness. Remember, you are what your consciousness is. If you're always criticizing others, that is what you are. You are what you are criticizing. So it is something that we realize the mind is yours. You can do anything you want to with it. It's yours. It's given to you of God to use. It's given to you to explore. It's given to you to expand. It's given to you to be intelligible. And it's given to you to learn, but it's given to you to reveal, and it's given you to hold fast to the memories and recollection of the power of God in you. That's what the mind is. Remember, your thoughts are always in this nimbus. But in every thought you have, where there is a samskara, where there's something that is not worked out, a samskara is a tendency, a karmic tendency. There is always with that a consequence. In other words, you cannot think a thing unless it has a consequence. And what plane it occurs on is what you will it, what your desire is. In other words, every thought has a consequence already in it as it starts in your mind. Remember, thought and mind are two different things. thought is active as energized processes of the mind. Mind is a vehicle of energy for thoughts. And ideas are originally great archetypal ideas which feed mankind for the increase of God and for revelation and illumination of his being in earth and his rise in earth itself. Our Lord Jesus came to lift us. He came to lift the axis pole of the earth. He came to make it possible for us to stand dimensional consciousness on all levels. So we, in self-realization and in all forms of God realization, we must realize the path we trod is sacred, and the first law we were taught in Niscience when we were working years and years to go together was reverence. Reverence. Reverence for one another. Reverence for the teachings. Reverence for the teacher. Reverence for our building of worship, even though it was just a small place with nothing. Reverence for it, building an atmosphere of reverence. And now we're transforming or transposing that to reverence for our own altar at home. You can walk into any house and feel if there's reverence. I always knew the moment I walked in a home, if there were no books, there was no life. If there was no reading, there was no communication. And that is so. A person who cannot read, beloved ones, he is absolutely living in a bottle. And he is shutting out his own light. He is not increasing his consciousness. He's not exposing himself to the crossplay of other people's ideas. He is not brave enough. He is thinking that it's all right there in the little thimble he calls his brain. But the thing that we especially must remember, that we are communicating, exchanging, merging, blending, fusing in all forms of that which is the active, cyclic, timing aspect between time and space. We are gods, as Jesus said. But do we use our Godhead? No, because we permit the wrong end of communication. We have a telephone line in the mind that has a very little fine line that always just plays to the ego and won't transmit anything else but communication to the ego, and especially the things that it likes. But we have a bigger line that is much heavier in its cable and loaded and charged with a dynamite of superconsciousness. And we must learn especially how to use it and how to generate that sharing and fusing and communication. And friendship begins with Agape spirit, and clique is absolutely going out in this world. We may say, oh, it will take a long time. Well, what of it? It takes a long time to create, and it's wonderful. We jump in and out of reincarnations. But we have the illusions. We're hypnotized to thinking this is the only one. We look in the mirrors and say, there's another like me. I'm the only one there is. But we realize that suppose right here you have a string of grotesque figures you've been, and they're not very pretty. And suppose they're going to start coming in your mind like shadows, and you're going to say to yourself, well, I couldn't have done that. The very idea, I couldn't possibly have done that. You've done almost everything there was to do, darlings. You haven't left anything out. And that is why, at this present time, beloved ones, you are given the opportunity to use the Christ to get in there and generate his love and light and to ignite yourself with goodness. And of course, we're not going to go around with our jelly bean jars or our little balloons to jump in bouncing waves as little pogo sticks in society. We're not going to do this. We are going to simply be friendly, kind, and the angels, beloved ones, who watch over you will arrange it that you are right at that time, at that point where that is needed, and no one else could have given the answer but you. But do you get stuffed up and egotistical because you gave the answer? No. It's nothing. You handle these things all the time. You know what these things are. That's no wonder consciousness, because in you, you have the power to do much more than this. And even more than Jesus, he said. Because, why? Because Jesus was born in an age when no one understood the atom or the molecule. No one understood if he had started talking about space and spaceships. Well, they really would have thought he was beside himself or mad. But now you can talk about those things and see the wonder of space and the wonder of man, what he really is. Don't despise technology and science. It is marvelous. It's a side of man that had to be in this period in time. But the thing that is sad is that the danger is that it will lose the understanding that it comes from God. The understanding that it comes from God. Technology comes from God. When a doctor ministers to you with his hands of healing and his surgery, it comes from God. When he gives you medicine, and if you are taking it in right understanding, it is coming from God. So we have to realize that life is so wonderful. 60 years, 70 years, 50 years, 80 years, 90 years are no time at all to explore it. So God has provided us with many times, with countless times of rebirth in the earth, so that we can come back in appropriate times to what we must know and what we must learn. But God has given us the opportunity in us to each time to know more and to use it better. And if we do not do this, if we betray it, and if we sink down into that which is weak and which is fearful and which is lacking in confidence of the will in God, then we certainly have wasted an incarnation, and we're going to have to make up for it in compound interest with several extra ones, which are going to be meaningless and perhaps in enslavement to the willpower of someone else. Every day you're seeing people born in the earth who can't walk for themselves, who can't talk for themselves, who are dependent on others. How did they get that way? Because, beloved ones, they misuse their will in some other time of life. They misuse their will. How do we come in this earth with cataracts, born with cataracts, a baby? How did he get those fine spots and the vision in the forming in the womb? Was it because of the mother and father had sinned, as the disciples said? And the answer is no. The one who brings the cataracts, beloved one, has been blind to see the truths of God, has been exposed to them, mind you, but refused to see them. He comes in with his eyes blind. So everything has its consequence, that is thinking in the samskara temperament of the mind, thinking in thought. The mind is constantly at work. Its two great assets especially relates to memory and to recollection, but especially to revealing. Memory and revelation. These things, that this is the most important purpose of the mind, and it's the most successful point of place. It's when it's in the state of remembering and revealing. So, beloved ones, this is an important time, Epiphany. Post-Epiphany, the desert, Satan, taking Jesus up to the high place, offering him the power to rule the total world without a single retraction, giving him everything if he would do what Satan asked him to do. First, he must turn stones into bread. He must prove that he could change matter. Now, what is man doing now? He's changing stones into bread. But he's doing it in the process of soul discovery. He's not doing it to show power. Because what you do with your mind and what you do for the creation and betterment and revelation of God is not to show off what you can do as a mind, but what the will of God in you can do. What the one who has organized you and who has sent you forth from the stillness of the deep, out of the heart of his great eternal spirit. We are all one in him. Now this story, you know, of course, is in every Eastern book, is that when you are digging a well and you go down 50 feet, you suddenly strike other canals of water which run in and through that well, and you are getting always pure, clean water. That is the way it is with spiritual life, is that when you are going down, the inevitable is that you must communicate with the source, that you do not lose that flowing and interflowing. And that is the true teaching now. That is, Niscience is an interflowing teaching. It is gathering access to knowledge inside of you, not outside of you. Your knowledge outside of you is the fall through which your inner knowledge is shown and revealed and is organized. The inner is teaching you. Meditation to the Western mind was the most curious and, well, I would say not controversial, but the Western person is a very, he belongs on the monkey level of the second chakra, and he's always jumping from limb to limb, curious about everything, and he's always has a restless mind. That is the ordinary Western mind. He's never at rest. His mind is just jumping like a monkey all the time. So it is this monkey consciousness that gets us in trouble. If you start seeing monkeys in your dreams, you better start working to get a little higher, because that means that you are wasting your mind energy. And conversation, useless conversation, which doesn't amount to anything, is the most, I would say, the closest thing to describing how you can waste energy. Talking about things that don't matter. And especially things about other people that you think are wrong with them. That doesn't matter to you. Doesn't matter at all. Unless, of course, they have you endangered in some certain way. But God has taught you how to take care of yourself. For every adversary you meet, you have warriors, 10,000 warriors of angels to help you. No matter what adversary it is, you have the power with their help, their battlegrounds to help you, the guardian angels. All you have to do is know that they are witnesses, clouds of witnesses around you and of you. That when you are in some situation where you're persecuted or where even someone thinks they have the right to scourge you, do you know that there's some people living today in religious groups and spiritual groups who think they have the right to scourge a person? That they have the right to see him punished and they enjoy it? They have that sadistic side in their nature. They enjoy seeing someone get a lesson. And that is scourging. That is persecution of a high order. And that is not agape. That is part of the duality of cliques. Now, we've got to have on the altar truth. We must have at the teacher's bench veracity and revealment, which proves life. If we are going to teach a child how to grow, take a twig from a tree and show him how the tree stops at its branches and how in the life of the etheric body, that energy stops at certain places and builds a certain reservoir of energy. If you are going to teach a child about anything, you must go to nature. The schoolrooms must return to objects of nature to teach the children. And we will not have need for so much botany and so much different zoology and things up the line of the first primal order. We will have, and accept, the young ones will accept the higher order of zoology and the higher order even into the branches of chemistry, because their minds will already be flexible in union with nature. This is where education begins. You do not give toys to your children that have no meaning. You do not give them mechanical plastic things that are bulldozers, which they are never going to bulldoze a ditch in their life. But you are going to give them things that have meaning, things that are soft, and things they can touch, and things they can shape and sculpt. And you're going to show them through nature's leaves and plants and ferns and shells. All these things you are going to teach the child when he's still impressionable. But you're also going to teach that child that shell is here, and it's also in France, and it's also in Russia. It may have a different order or different origin, but it's there. Its root archetype is there. And that shell is just not a phenomenon for that one place. That's where you begin to share with a child. That is the way to teach children. That's the way I used to teach children here at the round table. Beloved ones, I'm saying these things now because I want you to understand fully what is passing through you And what you can capture from this as your golden treasure of the soul and the spirit in these cyclic times, which are so important in initiation. And to teach in this manner is to teach you the meaning of life in its fullest. It is to teach you that you are a whole being in God only when you permit yourself to be whole. Why can you not be a sunrise, rising on a new day with the warmth and sun of your soul, because your soul is a sun? Why can you not listen to what the voice of the soul is singing from the night, where it has been in company with all of those who are by nature, and the heavenly angelics are Agape by nature? Because morning should be the most rising and optimistic time of the day because of this. But if you are born with the weak farmer's land, you are wanting to get up at noontime or maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you've got to get your thymus in order. And how are you going to do it? You're going to do it through meditation. Because meditation is not only a great state of peace, but it is a flowing of all of the true energies for the body. It is healing the body. There are heart patients today who are alive because they meditate. And that is because they bring all these harmonic and harmonial phases of their nature, and lymph especially of their nature, together. They blend it. And then they receive the flow of the primordial breath, or enter into the third breath. The book, My Third Music, is now in the printers, The Third Music. I started reading it yesterday. I believe it is a great book, even if I wrote it. I am grateful. It is a powerful book. And it's telling you things with all the terminologies and all the explanations that I've been trying to tell you, what it is telling you there in a more concise form. And the special 3 parts of the book are most helpful, and the last part on mandalas is extremely helpful. Beloved ones, God in you is your altar. Stay with him. Worship him in spirit and in truth. Be satisfied with nothing less but the truth. Know yourself as a harpsichord of truth. Let it sound for you, but especially be willing to take what it is saying about the things that are standing between you and the light. You may be impatient. You may be impulsive. You may be cruel in your censoring, or you may be sarcastic in your assessing. Or you may be simply afraid, absolutely afraid of human contact. We must learn that the third breath and the third music coincide with each other. God, Christ, Jesus. Christ, God is first, Christ second, Jesus third breath. I and the Father are one. The Father who dwelleth in me, he doeth the works, said Jesus. He knew the Father. He knew him before this eternity system. Before the world was, I am, he said. And he said he was with the Father before this eternity system began. And he said they helped to create this earth system together. Read what he means, because he means what is said. You see, I the other day had the question come to me through telephone and through mail. What was the difference between Bibles? And the person was a minister in a church. And he wanted to know why I chose the King James Version. I chose the King James Version as the true Bible. First, because it was at the time when men were beginning to truly read the Bible for the first time with freedom. It was also in the time of the Shakespearean period in which the logos of beautiful poetic and beautiful prose was the custom of speaking. It was especially the time when we used the love term of love, friendship, and agape, and thou, and thine. These are words of first heaven. The language of first heaven does not use the the you. It does not use the to. It uses thee and thou and thine. So when you are returning to the pure Logos of the first heaven, reading the King James Version brings you back to that pure Logos. If you are reading a modern Bible interpreted by a human man with certain grammatical knowledge of use of words and uses with his intellect the changing of that sacred Bible, you are getting into something of human pride, which I do not care to read Jesus through that wall. I want to read him through the love Logos. I want to read him. Now, there are some words that the Old English version did not explain properly, but they still are beautiful in the sense that they give us the flow of love in the tones of the voice. And there is nothing that reads on the altar as beautiful as the King James Version. If you want to see the comparison of the harshness of a new book, which gives us translation of the Old Testament, read the difference between the 23rd Psalm in these translations and the 23rd Psalm in the King James Version. And you will see why you simply cannot stand the tonal air that comes into your consciousness, which does not give that full meaning of the beautiful Logos of God. That is why I use the King James Version and recommend it to the students, because I feel that it still retains that which was given to them in that period in sacred time, even though it was the cruelest, and even though the king who ordered this book translated, it still contains the love body Logos of the first heaven. Beloved ones, you are loved, and I know that with you, if you are going north, I wish I could be just a little part of the dust in your automobile or the plane seat or something, so I could hear some of those little blocks, you know, that you put in, they call them, in different machines they have now today, or wonder when I'm born again, will they still be here? Do you think they will? That they'll have all these transistors and all these little parts and everything, or they will have something so much greater that you cannot even conceive of now? That's what I believe in for the new era time when I will return to this earth. I believe that we are going to have a terrible time in between, in which we are going to have awful cruelties in this earth because of enforcement of monies and taxes and enforcement of labor and everything to build the space system. And then after that is coming a higher level of evolvement. I believe that you are just escaping that by the skin of your teeth, that you will all die before this occurs. But I believe when you come back, that which was accomplished out of this terrible cruelty. Remember, the coal mines even today are examples of terrible cruelty of man to man. That is a terrible cruelty to impose on men, to go down into the earth like slaves, blackening their lungs. It is still being done in earth, that men use others in cruel fashions to gain their own greeds. And that is going to occur through the technology era, which we are now in. That is going to occur to men who have no education, or men who are laggards, or men who are the wait for me people. These are going to be put into the harness of a semi-slavery, even more than that, because certain things will have to be happening to them so that they can do these things which relate to outer space and energies. I don't want to live in that era, and I'm not coming back in that period, neither are you. But when we do come back, that which all of this cruelty accomplished will then be a form of life in this earth, which is technically on another order altogether. Men are not going to be like the Greeks. They are not going to be like the Egyptians. They're not going to be like the Hebrews. They're not going to be like the Mohammedans. And they're not going to be like the Christians today. They're going to change through evolvement. And what we're doing now is the leap into that other era of consciousness, and that's what we're preparing for. The great Dharma is planting its seeds through us. They are growing in your consciousness. And every time you bring forth a realization, it's part of that Dharma speaking to you. God bless you, beloved ones. I love you. O God, be with us.
O God, be with us.
Grant us thy peace, thy joy.
Grant us thy peace, thy joy.
Grant us that we may be in thee.
Grant us that we may be in thee.
In awareness.
In awareness.
We cling to thee, O Lord.
We cling to thee, O Lord.
May we sit at thy table.
May we sit at thy table.
And know thy true sacrament.
And know thy true sacrament.
And follow after thee.
And follow after thee.
Amen.
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 Visualize with color. Try to see what color does to you. Color is in the roof of your mouth. Color is always coming down to you through the rays of your soul and the sun united. And when you are meditating, you see a blue light. And then if you go through the light, go through it, you will then see other lights. And then that will immerse you in holy peace and healing and revelation. At the end of every meditation is revelation on some level. Extend your meditation till it reaches the time of quiet, till it reaches the time in which the little will and the little mind are at rest. And they consent for that which we call buddhi to start its informing work for you. As a baby takes its first breath and uses its taste for that which is beyond back of breathing, so do you start in a spiritual life with color. This is why one thing, mandalas are also vitally important, because they work with color, and it's beyond more than the retina of the eye. It is up in the upper palate of the mouth, which is like a cathedral, like an arch. And there is a holy elixir which drips from the crown of the head. It's a vibration, but it's called elixir. And it falls here, and then it becomes a prism. And that prism casts out the color. And then the first color that comes is you. It's what you are, what you're working with at the time. If it is orange, it has to do with the saints. If it is yellow, it is intellect. If it is gold, it's the soul. If it's green, it's healing. But it's more likely than anything to be blue. Always seeing that blue light. Go through the light and let it bring the other lights of the palette there. Now, if you want to extend that light a little deeper, you can take your tongue and press it in the roof of your mouth. Breathe up. Exhale. But in that interim, there is where the color comes and rests here. Then it disperses itself like many, many different beautiful little particles of God. It is so wonderful to sit in the bliss of God and to know Him and to feel His smile and His blessing and His love. He has set us out into this world. We are first little rowboats, and then we become big passenger vessels. And then finally we become landing places where we go into the other shores of knowledge. Bless you. You are loved.
Thank you. Blessings. Thank you.
Bless you, beloved. I'll be thinking of you Sunday morning. The wonderful things you are doing up there. And sharing with each other. Remember, those people do not have always the privilege of having all the things you have here. Take your treasure and share them with them. But that is the beauty of Niscience. It really ignites very fast for those who are ready. Bless you. Okay. Bless you all. I have maybe two